Greetings to all our viewers tuning in to our channel. If this is your first time here, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our analyses on the shifting dynamics shaping our region and the world. McDonald's, a name that once symbolized the rise of modern America, the glow of globalization, and the belief in a connected world. Since the 1980s, when its bright red and yellow lights first lit up Times Square or the streets of Tokyo, McDonald's brought more than just a hot burger or a crispy box of fries. It offered something new, a promise of convenience, the rhythm of industrial life, and the American dream within reach for anyone, anywhere. And yet, this very symbol, after decades of global conquest, has now become the epicenter of an unprecedented global standoff. When the company announced a steep drop in revenue, many initially brushed it off as a typical slowdown in the economy. But then a political and cultural storm swept in. Beijing and New Delhi, in a move heavy with symbolism, slapped massive tariffs as high as 300% on McDonald's. This wasn't just about trade or taxes. It was a cold, calculated message. The era where American brands automatically set the global standard is now being challenged. A simple burger, a side of fries, or a Happy Meal that once captivated children across the globe has suddenly become a weapon in a clash of civilizations. It's no longer just about food, it's about identity and power, about the American way of life colliding with the growing desire of other civilizations to define themselves. When a humble fast food brand becomes a symbol of dispute, it tells us something profound. The world is entering a new phase, where even the smallest details, from the clothes we wear and the phones we carry to the meals we eat, can carry powerful political messages. In this unfolding picture, the United States cannot remain on the sidelines, and Donald Trump, with his trademark refusal to back down, has turned McDonald's crisis into a full-blown, symbolic war of national significance. But before we dive into this high-stakes confrontation, we need to go back to where it all began. McDonald's. How did a fast food chain become a global icon, and why has that very success placed it squarely in the eye of today's storm? Since the 1980s, McDonald's didn't just expand its chain of restaurants like an ordinary business. Every red and yellow sign erected on a street corner in Asia, Europe, or Africa felt like an American flag being planted on new ground. It was a powerful message of presence, a civilization making its mark. The United States wasn't just exporting technology, politics, or military power. It was exporting how people ate, how they lived, and even the daily rhythm of industrial society. As people used to joke, wherever there's a McDonald's, that place has officially entered the orbit of globalization. It's no coincidence that the image of thousands of Russians lining up for the grand opening of the first McDonald's in Moscow in 1990 became a symbol of an entire era. For them, the Big Mac wasn't just fast food, it was a ticket to the modern world they longed for. Nor was it random that Chinese youth in the 1990s saw sitting inside a McDonald's as a civilized experience, as if they had crossed a threshold and entered into harmony with the West. McDonald's became living proof that the American dream didn't just exist in movies or towering skyscrapers. It was right there, on the table in front of them. And yet, that very success created a paradox. As McDonald's popped up everywhere, from bustling cities to quiet little towns, it stopped being just a convenient restaurant. It became a symbol of American soft power, of the American way of life, and in turn, a target for resistance. For many countries, having a McDonald's in the heart of their capital felt like an acknowledgement of US cultural dominance. Every burger sold was not just a commercial transaction. It was a quiet affirmation that American culture had embedded itself in their everyday lives. During the heyday of globalization, that wasn't seen as a problem. But as the world began to witness the rise of new economies, as national pride surged and the desire to break free from the shadow of the West grew stronger, McDonald's suddenly found itself cast as a scapegoat. A Big Mac in Beijing or New Delhi was no longer viewed as just a meal. It became tangible proof of America's presence and influence. And that's when it became clear, American-style globalization was no longer as welcome as it once was. The question started to surface, is the model of Americanizing the world through familiar brands nearing its end? McDonald's, once hailed as a messenger of modernity, now stands on a fragile line between admiration and rejection. And as rising powers like China and India choose to push back, the humble burger has crossed the threshold from commercial product to political symbol. This is the moment McDonald's is being pulled into a much larger battle, a battle where the burger becomes a cultural icon and a wave of resistance begins rising from the east. When Beijing announced its plan to impose a 300% tariff on all McDonald's-related products, the international community immediately recognized that this wasn't just an economic maneuver. It was a political and cultural declaration. Chinese state media didn't hesitate to brand McDonald's as a covert gateway for the West, a symbol of the American lifestyle infiltrating daily meals and everyday habits. The tariff wasn't simply about protecting domestic businesses. It was a message loud and clear. China has the resolve to defend its cultural identity against the tide of American-style globalization. In India, the reaction was even more fervent. Parliament in New Delhi erupted in heated debate. Why should a nation of over 1.4 billion people, rich with hundreds of regional dishes and countless local food brands, allow an American burger to dominate the dining table? Seizing the moment, homegrown brands like Burger Singh launched bold ad campaigns promoting the Indian-style Big Mac, featuring fiery masala spices and traditional recipes. Across New Delhi's streets, McDonald's familiar red and yellow signs were gradually overshadowed by bold, patriotic posters urging citizens to eat Indian burgers, love Indian motherland. What's striking is that China and India, two of the world's oldest civilizations, both with histories deeply impacted by Western influence, simultaneously chose McDonald's as the target of their resistance. A burger, once just a way to fill one's stomach, has now become a symbol of national identity, a source of pride in resisting cultural assimilation. When young Chinese post videos on Douyin of themselves throwing away French fries, or Indian youth chant "boycott McDonald's" on Twitter, it's no longer just a personal consumer choice. It's a psychological campaign, a public statement. We refuse to be cultural shadows of America. This highlights that McDonald's power doesn't lie solely in its market share, but in the symbolic weight it carries. And because of that, when two economic giants attack at once, the pressure doesn't stay confined to a single brand. It strikes directly at America's soft power, the very force that has allowed Washington to maintain global leadership for decades. But across the Pacific, Washington couldn't sit idle. For Donald Trump, a man who sees McDonald's as part of the American dream and a chain deeply embedded in middle-class life, this wasn't just about a brand under attack. He saw it as a direct blow to the American way of life. And so, from a single burger, the spark ignited into something far greater, a symbolic war, one in which Trump is preparing to launch fierce counterattacks, not just to defend a brand, but to defend America's global standing. Donald Trump understood clearly that McDonald's wasn't just a business brand. It was part of the very soul of the American way of life. It's where millions of American families have shared quick yet flavorful meals, a familiar symbol on highways, in neighborhoods, and etched into the childhood memories of generations. So when China and India chose McDonald's as their target, Trump didn't see it as a simple trade dispute. He saw it as a challenge to national pride. And with his characteristic refusal to back down, he decided to turn the incident into a full-scale political battlefield. In the early days, Trump appeared on television with his signature tone, firm, forceful, and unapologetic. He announced that the U.S. would retaliate with a 200% tariff on steel, electronics, consumer goods, and even pharmaceuticals from China. We will not give up an inch. We will not allow anyone to insult the American way of life, he declared. It was a message not just to Beijing or New Delhi, but to the millions of middle-class voters who see McDonald's as a part of their daily lives. But every strong word came with a steep price. Within weeks, U.S. stock markets wobbled. Prices of laptops, phones, and household goods began to climb, and American consumers started to feel the weight in every bill. Domestic industries, from automobiles to agriculture, grew anxious that a wave of retaliatory tariffs would shut them out of international markets. And the unsettling question began to surface. Is a burger really worth triggering a full-blown trade war, one that could last for years and shake the global economy to its core? Trump stood firm. He saw in this battle a chance to reinforce his image as the defender of America. an identity he's long cultivated with his voter base. But while he focused on protecting McDonald's as a cultural symbol, the world was witnessing a chain reaction. China and India were not acting in isolation. That spark of resistance quickly spread to other nations where the sentiment of American cultural imposition had long been simmering. And as early signals emerged from Moscow, from Brasilia, from Johannesburg, a new reality began to take shape. This symbolic war was no longer just a standoff between Washington and Beijing or New Delhi. It had become a much broader movement, one in which the BRICS nations found common ground in resisting American cultural dominance. From a single burger, this wave of defiance is now poised to become a global uprising. The battle didn't stop in Beijing or New Delhi. Once the spark was lit, it quickly spread to regions that had long harbored doubts and resentment toward American cultural influence. In Moscow, Kremlin officials welcomed the moment as a golden opportunity to prove that America was no longer invincible. Russian media eagerly resurrected images from the 1990s, when tens of thousands lined up outside the first McDonald's in Pushkin Square, as if ushering in a new era. Now, Russia wanted to show the world it had changed, that it no longer needed Western symbols to demonstrate progress. The call to say no to American burgers rang out in propaganda campaigns painted as an act of patriotism. In Brazil, a country proud of its agriculture and culinary diversity, the Ministry of Agriculture began discussing restrictions on imported fast food from the U.S. Local food chains seized the moment, launching burgers rich in native flavors promoted as choices that respect the environment and public health. Across the streets of São Paulo, the slogan, "Eat Brazil, Support Brazil," became a familiar refrain. People began to view McDonald's not just through the lens of consumption, but as a political choice. Eating a Big Mac now felt like helping American influence seep deeper into daily life. South Africa wasn't far behind. Amid rising unemployment and mounting social pressure, the Pretoria government rolled out the slogan, "Food Sovereignty." Local media emphasized South Africans deserve the right to choose food that reflects their own cultural identity, not rely on foreign fast food models. Small-scale protests morphed into a broader social movement where every box of fried chicken and every American-branded soda was labeled as a foreign element that needed to be cast out. BRICS, once a loosely connected economic bloc, suddenly found common ground on what seemed like a minor front, resisting American symbols. But behind that unity was a far-reaching strategy. These countries recognized that building a multipolar world required more than just energy, finance, or military strength. They had to reclaim the power to define culture. And in that race, McDonald's, with over 40,000 stores worldwide, became the ideal target. It was the clearest, most recognizable, and most vulnerable symbol of America. In this volatile global landscape, Washington began to feel the pressure. Because as the wave of resistance swept across the BRICS nations, cracks also began to show in Europe, traditionally America's staunchest allies. In Brussels, Paris, and Berlin, anxious expressions began to surface. Should they side with the US in this symbolic war, or remain silent to avoid getting caught in the spiral of retaliation? And it was this hesitation from Europe that only deepened America's headache. In Europe, once considered America's closest and most steadfast ally, the reaction to the symbolic war took on a very different tone. In Brussels, EU officials watched the unfolding conflict with caution. They understood that McDonald's wasn't just an American brand, but a critical link in the vast transatlantic supply chain. From American beef, Italian packaging, to German machinery, all of it intertwined in McDonald's massive global operation. If the chain were to collapse, the first to suffer wouldn't be Wall Street executives, but French farmers, German factory workers, and small to medium enterprises across Italy. And yet, Paris and Berlin couldn't easily side with Washington either. The weight of inflation was already pressing heavily on the lives of everyday citizens, and the anti-price hike protests still smoldered in the streets. In that context, jumping into a new trade war, especially one centered around an American burger, felt like voluntarily adding fuel to the fire. Europeans knew they couldn't sever ties with the US, but they also had no desire to become targets of retaliation from China, India, or Brazil. The EU's silence, therefore, was both a calculated act of avoidance and a reflection of the growing divisions within the bloc itself. Some European leaders worried that if the continent continued down the confrontational path laid out by Donald Trump, the already fragile trust between governments and their people would fracture even further. And while Washington called for unity among allies, emergency meetings in Brussels were focused not on solidarity, but on damage control, how to cushion the blow if the symbolic war escalated. Europe, in its blend of calculation and caution, had chosen a hesitant stance, verbally supporting the US while maintaining a deliberate distance in action. That hesitation only made America feel more isolated. And while Washington grappled with strategic decisions on a global scale, another storm had begun to quietly brew at home. Because as McDonald's stumbled, the ones most directly and painfully affected weren't the Wall Street elites or DC politicians. They were the millions of American farmers and workers whose livelihoods depend on every pound of beef, every ton of potatoes, every carton of milk supplied to McDonald's. For them, every shake of the brand felt like the approach of a nightmare. Across the vast fields of Nebraska, Idaho, and Wisconsin, American farmers are living under a cloud heavier than anything they've ever known. For them, McDonald's isn't just a major client, it's a lifeline. Every year, millions of tons of beef, potatoes, and milk are funneled through this fast food giant, generating jobs, income, and a sense of stability for entire communities. But now, with McDonald's being blocked in Asia and other emerging markets, that entire ecosystem is trembling. As one farmer put it bluntly, when McDonald's sneezes, we catch pneumonia. And it's true. As this massive supply chain loses chunks of its international market, cattle ranches are forced to cut their herds, milk prices crash, and potatoes pile up in cold storage with no buyers in sight. In Ohio, a packaging company that once thrived on McDonald's contracts is now laying off hundreds of workers. In Minnesota, a dairy plant has shut down production lines. In Illinois, logistics companies that used to haul food for McDonald's are facing a dry spell. From farmers and factory workers to truck drivers and fast food staff, everyone is getting swept up in the whirlwind of crisis. What makes it all the more bitter is that this crisis stems from something that once felt so distant, a political decision in Beijing or an anti-American slogan shouted in New Delhi. American farmers, who rarely paid much attention to diplomacy, are now bearing the brunt of a symbolic war. And they can see it clearly. A burger isn't just a meal, it's the livelihood of millions of families. In this climate, frustration is spreading fast. Farmers are left hoping, even begging, that Washington will find a solution before everything collapses. But in today's world, the battlefield isn't just in the fields or factories anymore. It's somewhere else entirely, online. In this new arena, it's not bullets but hashtags, not speeches but viral videos that shape public sentiment. And right there on this invisible front line, a new war is erupting, a media war, where every tweet and every clip can carry the explosive force of artillery. Online, the war against McDonald's erupted even faster than the waves of tariffs. In China, platforms like Weibo and Douyin were flooded with videos of young people tossing French fries into trash bins, proudly captioned, "We don't need American burgers to prove we're modern." In India, local brands seized every second of the moment, launching bold campaigns. "Eating burger sing is loving your motherland." Within days, the hashtag boycott McDonald's shot to the top, spreading across social platforms and quickly evolving into a full-blown social movement. This was no longer about personal meal choices. It had become a political statement, an expression of identity, a public declaration of refusal to be shaped by American influence. Every discarded burger, every filmed portion of fries became an arrow aimed straight at the heart of America's image. And the real danger lay in this. These campaigns were fueled by emotion, by national pride, something no tariff or sanction could extinguish. In this context, both McDonald's and the US began to realize that they weren't just losing market share. They were losing the hearts of global consumers. A brand once hailed as a symbol of modernization was now being reframed as a symbol of cultural invasion. And that raised a much larger, more profound question, one far beyond the scope of a burger. Can the United States still maintain the soft power that once captivated the world? The battle for soft power has begun, and McDonald's is only the opening shot. The most pressing question now is no longer whether McDonald's can survive this storm. What the world is truly watching is this: can the United States still hold on to its soft power? Because McDonald's, with a brand value in the hundreds of billions of dollars and more than 40,000 outlets across continents, was once seen as one of the clearest symbols of American-style globalization. And when a symbol that massive can be shaken by a coordinated wave of backlash from both governments and consumers, it begs the question: are other icons, from Coca-Cola, Hollywood, and Apple to the NBA, still safe? For decades, American soft power was rooted in the global spread of pop culture, brand identity, and the allure of the American dream. It seeped into music, film, fashion, even into fast food. But now, as the world begins to question, and in many cases, push back against, those very symbols, that soft power is showing signs of fracture. A burger is no longer just a convenient meal. It's become a battleground where nations assert their identity, challenge influence, and reclaim their voice. McDonald's may restructure, pull back, and eventually return, but the crack in the image of America's soft power will be far harder to repair. This conflict has made one thing clear. In the 21st century, weapons aren't always missiles or warships. Sometimes a single burger can shift the balance of global power. In 2025, the world witnessed a strange paradox. A simple burger, once just a common fast food item, became the epicenter of a global confrontation. McDonald's, long a symbol of integration, modern living, and American soft power, has now turned into a battleground where different civilizations assert their identity and push back against Washington's influence. This isn't just a brand crisis. It's a stress test for America's global standing in an emerging multipolar world. Donald Trump may continue down the path of confrontation, defending McDonald's as a point of national pride. He can impose tariffs, issue sanctions, and wield the burger as a political shield. But at the same time, he must face a sobering truth. The world no longer accepts American cultural dominance as passively as it once did. China and India have shown they're fully capable of turning a global brand into a symbol of resistance. BRICS has demonstrated that American soft power is no longer untouchable. McDonald's may survive, it may restructure, adapt, and evolve, but it will never again be just a fast food chain. From now on, the name McDonald's will forever be tied to a clash of civilizations, to a shifting global order. And who will have the last laugh? That answer is still being written, day by day, in every political decision, every consumer reaction, and every ripple across social media. For us, the observers, this is a moment for reflection. Has American soft power reached its limit, or is this merely a temporary setback before it roars back even stronger? If you found this analysis useful, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. What do you think? Will McDonald's stand firm or become the first casualty in the global war of symbols? And remember to subscribe so you won't miss our latest insights in upcoming videos.